Hello and welcome back, my brilliant students. I'm glad to have you in class, and we're ready for lesson number 4 of our short story unit. So, today we're going to be talking about tone and mood and how to analyze those in short stories. These are a couple of pretty abstract concepts, but with a little bit of practice, they're actually not too difficult to identify if you learn a few tricks of word choice. So, the first thing is first, I want to talk about mood. Mood is the same thing as atmosphere. So we can use mood and atmosphere interchangeably. Okay. Whenever someone is trying to create a mood or someone is trying to create an atmosphere, what they're doing is they're trying to evoke, or they're trying to create a feeling inside of you as a reader. Okay. So the mood or atmosphere of a work of fiction is feelings and emotions that the author is trying to evoke in the reader. Okay. You can analyze mood in music. You can analyze mood in visual arts as well. And you can think of, for example, just think of a song that has a very happy mood. What are some of the elements that give you joy or give you that feeling of ecstatic excitement? Is it a fast beat? Is it a good hook? Is it major chords and an uplifting chorus? Authors will employ their own methods in creating a mood in their reader. So just as a musician will use notes to create a mood in their listener, an author will use different elements of story and different tactics to create a mood or a feeling inside of you as the reader. So I'm going to read the following excerpt from Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. And as I'm reading this, I really want you to pay attention to the words and the phrases that he uses. Kind of begin to identify what are the words and phrases that he uses to really bring the setting to life, okay? So I'm going to begin reading now. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few rank sedges, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul which I can compare to no earthly sensation more properly than to the after-dream of the reveller upon opium, the bitter lapse into everyday life, the hideous dropping off of the veil. There was an iciness, a sinking, a sickening of the heart, an unredeemed dreariness of thought which no goading of the imagination could torture into aught of the sublime. Pretty cool, huh? So, what is the mood? What was the atmosphere that was created in this story, in specifically this setting? So I want you to pick out some words and phrases that will help you identify it. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so now. So after looking over this paragraph, what were some of the words and some of the phrases that you identified? Here are a few that I found. I found it striking that it was a mere house, although I did not get the sense that it was mere. Everything else seemed very oppressive to me. It seemed tortured almost. It seemed very foreboding and ominous because of things like bleak walls and vacant eye-like windows and rank sedges. Rank means like disgusting or smelly. A few white trunks of decayed trees. The trees are not alive. And he says things like depression of soul and the after dream of an opium addict, and not just a lapse into everyday life, but a bitter lapse whenever that opium addict is coming off of their bad trip, is what he's basically describing. That hideous dropping off of the veil, and all of a sudden life and reality comes surging back, and it's super oppressive and it's overwhelming for the person. And there was an iciness, a sinking, and a sickening of the heart, goading, torture, unredeemed dreariness. All of these has this foreboding, ominous sense or mood, doesn't it? Right? Now, as you can see, let's go ahead and examine the picture. Can you point to the objects and elements that help to establish the mood here in this painting of The Fall of the House of Usher? You see the approach of the character right here. I see crows in the trees, and the trees are just like in the story is described. The trees are all dead. I see grays a lot. I see very cool colors. I see very muted colors, with the exception of this sun that is almost completely obscured, almost like this sickly pale light casting its light over these bleak these bleak walls and vacant eyes of windows. Okay. And so those are just a few of the things that I look at that picture and I get the same kind of mood even as I'm looking at the painting that is supposed to depict the very fall of the House of Usher. I think the artist did a good job honoring Edgar Allan Poe's description of that house. So, there are a few ways that mood is established, and that is through setting, character, and plot. And the first thing is setting, and I put setting first because I think it's probably the most important. Writers create distinct settings and imagery with their word choices. And what you notice in the paragraph is that imagery is the descriptive language that invokes the five senses: sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. That is all using description, and that is all using imagery to basically bring those things to life. And whenever you're able to do that with a setting, that is going to make the setting come more alive, and it's going to create even a greater, or it's going to create a stronger atmosphere or mood in your reader. So, reading the following very similar sentences, what different moods do they convey? This is going through word choice, and this is I think this is specifically kind of targeting at the visual aspect. So the first one is: the black-barked apple tree stood apart, buffeted by windy gusts, struggling to preserve its last fruits. And then compare that to the next one, and they basically describe the same thing. The auburn-limbed apple tree rested independently, swaying with the breeze and happily dropping its ruby-red fruit. I mean, it almost describes it. You could be describing the same tree, right? But it sounds completely different depending on your word choice and the imagery that you select. So whenever we talk about the black-barked apple tree standing apart, being buffeted against gusts and struggling and trying to preserve itself, it makes it sound super isolated. It makes it sound like it's struggling. And whenever we compare that to it resting independently, swaying rather than struggling, and happily dropping ruby red fruit, it sounds like it's a plentiful apple tree that is happy and merry and is more than happy to give you that tasty Granny Smith so that you can have an apple pie. Characters also help to create mood in fiction. So characters contribute to the mood of a story, and the way that characters contribute to the mood is, as you are reading, look at what the characters say, think, and feel. So the ways that the characters are reacting to the setting or events in a story often reflect the mood the author is trying to create. Okay? Whenever we go back to the fall of the House of Usher, you notice that you knew what the feeling of that character, the speaker, as they were approaching the house. Okay? And then finally, the last element that helps to create an atmosphere or a mood in fiction is a writer will establish a mood at the beginning of a story, and oftentimes it will remain unchanged, but sometimes as a plot moves forward, the mood does change. So a tale that begins with tragedy may shift in the middle, and it may progress towards a happy ending. And so as the plots, characters, and setting evolve, so does the mood. Okay? Now, moving on to tone. If you can describe mood as the feeling that the author wants to evoke in you, the reader, tone is the attitude of the author. Okay? So you know what tone is. In fact, a great deal of communication is not with the content of what you speak. It's not the actual words coming out of your mouth, but it is the way that you speak them and the word choices that you use. So you know this because if you've ever had a parent or a teacher that has ever said, "Don't use that tone with me," right? You know exactly what they're saying. Okay? You know the tone that they're finding to be disrespectful. Okay, so the other case that I can think of is that oftentimes tone can be miscommunicated whenever we infer incorrectly what the tone is supposed to be, or whenever someone infers what they think your tone is whenever that's not what the case is. So text messages are particularly bad about this. I don't know if you've noticed, but have you ever been misunderstood in a text because a friend mistook your tone and they were inferring something different than what you were trying to intend? Okay, maybe you were just trying to say something matter of factly, or you were busy, or you were distracted, and so you just sent a short text to let them know what was going on, but they took that as you being short or brisk or abrupt or cold with them. Yeah, what that is that's not a translation in the tone of your text message. So I want you to read, or I'm going to read this poem, and it's Samuel Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And the speaker has a particular tone that I want to see if you can identify. So I'll go ahead and I'll start reading now. Down dropped the breeze, the sails dropped down. 'Twas sad as sad could be, and we did speak only to break the silence of the sea. Day after day, day after day, we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water, everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water, everywhere, nor any drop to drink. So take a moment. What do you think the tone was? What is the speaker trying to tell you? What is the attitude of the speaker as he's describing the ship and the crew and himself out at sea? I get the sense of hopelessness. I get the sense that there is this oppressive, completely this oppressive force, or this oppressive feeling that they'll never be able to shake, or that there's no point in struggling against it. It seems completely desolate, and it seems like it's the dark part of this sailor's soul as he is looking down the tunnel of death. Okay, that's the impression that I get. So tone in writing is a little difficult to establish, and a reader understands tone through clues that the author leaves in the text. So therefore, the author's word choices are important in creating it. So in order to analyze tone, you have to examine the author's words and the phrases that they use, similar to how we did it whenever we were examining the words that the author was using in their setting. Okay, so do the words have a positive or a negative connotation? So let's look at the different tones for the same incident again. The student made several excuses for his behavior. The student explained the reason for his behavior calmly and rationally. Notice how the use of the word excuses for his behavior is different than an explanation or reasoning for his behavior. You see how one of those has a negative connotation and one of them has a more positive connotation? That is the difference in tone. So tone is best identified in word choice, as you noticed previously. And so by connecting tone and mood through word choice, this is what an author does in order to create their own particular unique style. And you can think of style as a reflection of the writer's personality and the way he or she relates to the readers. Style depends on the author's use of syntax, which is sentence structure, sentence length, punctuation, word order, things like that. And then figurative language also contributes it. One way that you can understand a writer's style is, first of all, mood and tone. Boom, combine those two things, right? So you can have the setting, and then you can have you can have the word choice. And imagine you going to a party, or imagine you going to a social event. And so the mood would be the atmosphere of the party, and then the tone could be what you're dressing up in, or what fashion you are presenting yourself. And so clothes can be formal, and they can be dressy, or they can be athletic or casual, right? And so you can apply any number of different fashions to whatever social gatherings you're going to, depending on what that atmosphere is. Sometimes people will go in and they will lean into that atmosphere. Let's say, like whenever people go to prom, people want to go formal, they want to go dressy, and some people really lean into that, whereas some people, will go and they'll make their own they'll make their own zoot suit out of bright red duct tape. Okay, and so like they kind of go against that, and so they're applying their own tone to this atmosphere or this mood of the social gathering, right? So a writer can adopt different styles to discuss different ideas or events. Their style can be formal, informal, archaic. It can be journalistic. It can be modern. It can be short and brusque, or it can be eloquent and loquacious. It can be any number of different things. Okay, as many different ways that there are to speak, that's how many tones there are. As many different ways that there are to feel, that's how many moods there are. And those two combinations, or those two in combination, is how you create a style. So I have 2 assignments for you today. You're going to be doing both. Okay, first, I want you to think of the most memorable place or places that you've ever been. Like, just pick one. Like, just kind of like brainstorm and pick the most memorable place. And it can be memorable because it was beautiful, because it was striking, because it brought you joy. It can be memorable because it was frightening. It can be memorable because it was suspenseful or thrilling. It can be memorable for any number of different reasons. And then I want you to use what you have learned about mood to establish a feeling in me, the reader, by using descriptive language and imagery of where you were. Okay? Next, to master tone, I'm going to give you a scenario, and you'll have to explain the scenario 3 different ways to 3 different people, and your tone is going to need to change in order to match your audience. Okay? So, with all of that said, I have no doubt that you're going to do great, and don't stop learning, my brilliant students.